what did I show last time? The wall lighting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now
The
let
wall,
me,
the gate.
yeah. So last time when I show it, the shadow was not affected by the the light sources, right?
Mm.
So then I had like one implementation that sort of worked, but I'm not very happy with. Let me show you.
Mm.
Do you see this?
Okay.
I might have shown this to you before.
Yeah.
So as you can see, right,
Mm.
uh, uh, see the shadow is determined, right, by the 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 closest light source. Meaning,
Mm.
I will grab the light source that's closest to the player and then use that to
Mm.
determine the orientation and the scale of the shadow,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
The thing that I do
Mm.
not like about this implementation is that the the shadow casting position, right?
Mm.
That determines the how the shadow will look. It lerps
Mm.
from light to light.
Mm.
So that means when the moment it switches to another light source, right? There is
Mm.
this unnatural transition, right? So it's like even if you're not moving, right, your shadow moves. So it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you see that, right? When
Mm.
you're not moving, your
Yeah.
shadow moves. So that comes across as a bit unnatural,
Mm.
possibly distracting.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I posted.
Maybe.
Huh? Yeah, you saying?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I posted this on Reddit, and
Mm.
one of the feedback that I got was that I need to implement one shadow per light source.
Mm.
Yeah. So I tried that, but that didn't work out though. Like I spent like a few hours on it, and
Mm.
that didn't look very good. Let me show you how it ended up looking.
I can imagine, like realistically, you'd have one shadow per light source. Uh, but like in a game, that might become too complicated, right? That might be
Yeah,
very
and
visually.
I'm not really shading the scene to be how do I put it? I'm not employing a realistic style of like shading the scene, right? So then,
Mm.
uh, by right, if we are doing it realistically, the shadow should appear naturally, right? Depending on how we
Mm.
shade the
Mm.
the the environment, right? Right. But we're
Mm.
not doing that, right? The way I'm doing it is for shadow, I'm literally drawing
Mm.
a shadow and then blending over the floor. So,
Mm.
right. So I thought about that, right? And the solution is I should uh, change the opacity, right, of the shadow depending on its proximity to the surrounding light source,
Mm. Mm.
right? But of
Mm.
course, then I did a cone. I did something to approximate the light that will be obscured by the player itself.
Mm.
So here's a light source, right? So as you
Mm.
can see, I have one shadow with one light source, and then
Mm.
if I have another light source, you can see that there's another shadow that appears.
Mm.
You see that, right?
Yeah.
But as I get closer to one of the light source, you can see that it started to fade out, right?
Mm.
So I have that, but then it didn't look very good because when there are more light source, right? Then it looks like you're carrying a lump behind you, right? Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe there is a stand that's behind you, So it's highly unnatural, right? You can see I'm growing a lump. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not natural. So
Mm.
so I scrapped this. Right.
Mm.
I also don't like the way it's fading out. It's not very
Mm.
it's not very it's weird. Yeah.
Would, wouldn't it be the opposite way around? Like the part that is closest to your feet should be darker, and the part that's closer to your head, the shadow's head, should
That
be
is true.
lighter.
That's true. That but for that I can tweak the opacity of the gradient at my feet actually. So
Mm.
that's a mistake on my part, but it still doesn't solve the fact
Mm.
that that when there are multiple shadows, it looks very lumpy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then
Mm.
I ended up working on the third implementation.
Mm.
The third implementation goes back to only one shadow, right? Instead of one
Mm.
shadow per light source. So now I have like a default. I have a default shadow casting position on top of my head, like that, right? Then there is a gradual lerping, right, of the shadow casting position, depending on how close I am to a light source. So I've drawn some debug lines, right, as you can see. So the lerping starts, the weight, right, the weight that controls the lerping kicks in the moment I walk into this blue circle. So as you can see, right, this is the shadow casting position, right? And as I go closer, right, you can see that it starts to steer itself towards the light,
Nice.
right? And then as I walk out, right, you can see that there's a gradual change.
Nice.
So then what happens if there are like two light sources, right? So this, as you can see, I'm only being affected by the light source on the left, right? But then what happens if I walk in here? Do you see that? Do you see the weight shifting? So
Nice.
now there's this gradual change. So there isn't this transition that kicks in, right, the moment you switch to a different closest light source.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm doing now is that the shadow casting position, right, is a very center of all lights
Right.
with varying weights depending on how close you are
Cool.
to a
I
light
was just
source.
about to say, suggest earlier maybe some kind of barycentric coordinate kind of thing.
Yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And see, if I have a third light source, then it gets tweaked. It gets, how do I put it? It gets affected by all of the light sources, right?
Nice.
So there's still some stuff that I can tweak. For instance, the weight, right? The weight. How do I put it? The way the weight works, it's linear, right? It's like it grows linearly depending on how close you are. But I might not want a linear weight, right? I might want it to be maybe exponential.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that then it might look better, right? That way, if I'm closer to a particular light source, then it will appear to be a lot stronger.